Hello, everyone. Welcome to Astrox Radio, episode 3 in 2025. This is your favorite podcast host, Astrox, and today we're covering many topics, including space news from space.com, Astrolixy OS devlog, robot dogs, which is kind of interesting, and some hot takes on tech, space technologies, and rockets. So, why don't we get right into it, shall we? We're starting with the Astrolixy OS devlog. So, as many of you know, I'm making an operating system called Astrolixy OS. So, operating system, yeah. And in that, I'm making it for a device called the PicoCalc. It's by a company called Clockwork Pi. And they've made other devices in the past, such as the DevTerm, the Game Shell, and the uConsole. After that, they released the PicoCalc. When I bought it, it was 75 USD. Currently, it's 79 USD because of inflation, but that's not much of an increase, so I do recommend going to get it. Astrolixy OS, I've released version alpha and version beta so far, and I plan on releasing the first actual version in around a month and a half from now, as I have lots and lots of things to add in it. One of those things is a C interpreter, like a really lightweight one, called PicoC. PicoC runs on around 50 kilobytes of RAM, only 50 kilobytes, and it can do a lot of things that normal C can do. And you can add your own libraries and external things to it and it's very modular, to make it even better. Now I want to integrate that into Astrolixy OS so that I can create apps, and the user, which is you, can create apps and run them on device so that you can use the device better and better. As the Pico 2W core comes with 520 kilobytes of RAM, which is a lot, and I know that, but I want to keep the operating system minimal so there's a lot of user space for apps and other things. Right now, efficiency is going to be very important. If I can't master efficiency, it will be really hard for me to make everything else integrated. As when around the second actual version or third version, I may add the graphical user interface, the GUI, which has all these buttons and all that everywhere, and you can actually see like shapes, boxes. Like, think about this: Windows, Mac OS, Linux with a GUI. You can see all these like taskbar, background, like desktop background, all of that. That's my aim. I'm trying to make that kind of thing for Astrolixy OS. But wait, Astrox, there's only 520 kilobytes of RAM, and you said you didn't even want to use it all. How are you going to do this? Great question. I am going to use the PicoCalc's onboard PS RAM, which is, I'm pretty sure, stands for pseudo-static RAM. The Pico 2W board comes with SRAM, which is static RAM, I think. And there's this PSRAM, which is already built onto the PicoCalc, no matter what core you have. So it has 8 megabytes of it instead of just 500 kilobytes. Even though PSRAM is known to be slightly slower than SRAM, 8 megabytes is tons to work with for adding a graphical user interface. And that will be incredibly crucial to use when I do implement it in the future. I also want to add some things like features in Astrolixy OS of the built-in apps, like in this version. So there'll be built-in apps of a calculator app, maybe a notepad app. What other apps could you have? Some game, like just one game I want to make, and a few other things. This would be really useful as there's already default apps, and it would less incentivize the user to make their own apps. There would also be a basic code editor, and it could run C code, as there's already a built-in C interpreter. Why not just use it? And because of these apps that are built in, you can use your PicoCalc much more than what stuff you can do with the basic PicoMite, that all you can do is run Basic and not have much stuff to work with, as it uses a lot of RAM. I've seen this guy on the forums and on YouTube called J Blanked. You might have seen him. He's made a firmware for the Pico Calc called PicoWare. And PicoWare is a fully fledged operating system with a GUI, built-in apps, and everything. And it's kinda seeming better than Astrox OS. But his work is what's put a lot of inspiration to me to create a GUI. So shout out to him. Also, I know it's quite early in the podcast, but a quick reminder to subscribe, as I'm wanting to get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year, and maybe try and get the 3 million short views in the last 90 days to get the first stage of monetization. It's all free of charge or anything to you, and it will just help me, and it's free for you. So please support me by hitting the subscribe button and watching all my videos and shorts. Let's continue. So I actually tried looking for contributors to help me with Astrox OS, and I created a whole form for it, and 3 people only responded, and they were all annoying responses. Like, they would just put in fake details, and they would, like, as for the Reddit username, they would put my Reddit username, and they would just say, make it open source, make it open source. You guys don't understand. I'm not going to make it open source because I'm trying to put as much hard work in as I can possibly do. And then, what if some person just comes around, steals it, adds something better that the community wanted, but I didn't, and gets way more people onto their operating system after all the hard work I did? That's the issue I have with open sourcing my operating system. Because people would just steal it, redistribute it, all of that. And what about a license? Even if I make a really restrictive license, how many people are really going to listen to that? You can redistribute it on another platform instead of GitHub or something. And no one can do anything about that. So that's why I'm not making open source. If you want help with anything related to the Pico Calc, go onto the forums. And if you want help with setting up Astrox operating OS, then first check out the documentation on my GitHub and all the YouTube shorts and videos I've made on it. And then if you're still struggling, reach out to me on the forums or on Reddit, because my username is Astrox_YT in capitals for YT. So that was nice talking about Astrox OS. But now let's move on to some space news from space.com. JWST delivers first weather report of nearby world with no sun, stormy and covered in auroras. JWST is James Webb Space Telescope, by the way, if you didn't know. Understanding these weather processes will be crucial as we continue to discover and characterize exoworlds in the future. The latest weather forecast doesn't come from Dublin, London, or New York. It comes from deep space, where a lonely world drifts without a sun and glows with auroras more dazzling than Earth's northern lights. The world, called SIMP-0136, is about 200 million years old and lies about 20 light years away in the constellation Perseus. It isn't quite a world nor a star. Astronomers classify it as a brown dwarf, sometimes dubbed as failed stars, because it is not really a star or a planet. Like stars, this world forms from collapsing clouds of gas, but it never grows big enough to sustain hydrogen fusion in its core, the defining trait of a star. And unlike Earth, the star doesn't orbit its own sun. It's a rogue world that spins once every 2.5 hours as it floats freely through space. Now, thanks to JWST, astronomers have delivered the most detailed quote-unquote weather report yet for this strange world, tracking subtle changes in its atmosphere over a full rotation. The study, published on September 26th in the journal Astronomy and Astrophysics, is the first to track how a brown dwarf's atmosphere changes as it spins, revealing shifts in temperature, chemistry, and clouds. Astronomers say the findings open a new window onto the weather of worlds beyond our solar system. These are some of the most precise measurements of the atmosphere of any extrasolar object to date, and the first time that changes in the atmosphere properties have been directly measured, said study lead author Eva Nazardkin of Trinity College Dublin in Ireland said in a statement. The JWST's sensitive instruments captured minute changes in the brightness as SIMP 0136 spun, letting scientists map its atmospheric layers. Astronomers had long suspected the flickering light came from patchy clouds. Instead, the study found that the star/planets clouds, made of sand-like grains of hot silicates, are remarkably stable. The real drama was instead unfolding higher up in the atmosphere, where the team discovered a layer of air nearly 570 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 300 degrees Celsius, warmer than models predicted. According to the study, the extra warmth is most likely caused by auroras. On Earth, auroras appear as shimmering curtains of light when charged particles from solar wind interact with our world's magnetic field. On SIMP 0136, however, a much stronger magnetic field supercharges this effect, with charged particles slamming into the atmosphere so forcefully that they not only glow but also pump energy into the air itself, heating the world's upper layers. This is actually insane. And this article still has a bit more for you to read. So go on space.com and read the article. SpaceX is targeting October 13th for next Starship mega rocket launch. Flight 11 will be the last launch of Starship's current version 2 iteration. SpaceX's Starship mega rocket will fly again less than 2 weeks from recording if all goes to plan. They had announced on Monday, which is September 29th, that it's targeting October 13th for Starship Flight 10, which will be the final launch of the vehicle's current iteration. Liftoff will occur from SpaceX's Starbase site in South Texas. The window on October 13th will open at 7:15 p.m. EDT, which SpaceX had wrote in an update on Monday. The company will begin the webcast 30 minutes before liftoff. SpaceX is developing Starship to help humanity settle on Mars, a long-held dream of the company's founder and CEO, Elon Musk. The vehicle consists of two stainless steel elements, both of which are designed to be fully reusable. A first stage booster called Super Heavy, and an upper stage known as Starship, or SHIP for short. Starship version 2 is the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built, towering nearly 400 feet, which is 121 meters, above the ground when stacked. The next variant, version 3, will debut on Flight 12, is larger still at 408 feet, which is 124.4 meters tall. And the rocket will get even bigger over time, if all goes to plan. Version 4, which is expected to debut in 2027, is expected to be around 142 meters tall, which is 466 feet. Flight 11 will be very similar to Flight 10, which lifted off on August 26th. It was a complete success after a whole trail of failures. Well, this is part 1 out of 2, or section 1 out of 2 of the podcast done. Section 2 will be starting after a short break. So let's go. Did you know that the sound of a large rocket launching, like the retired space shuttle, could generate 180 decibels of acoustic energy at its base? That's almost as loud as a nuclear explosion and potentially lethal to humans at closer range. To prevent the sound wave from reflecting off the launch pad and literally shaking the rocket apart, NASA uses a massive sound suppression system. This system dumps over 900,000 gallons of water per minute onto the launch pad right at liftoff, which reduces the noise to as much safer but still deafening 142 decibels. Well, we're back with section 2 of Astrox Radio episode 3, and let's get right into it. So, I have this robot dog called the Bitu, and it's from this company called Pitoy. It's around 250 USD, I'm pretty sure, and I bought it and I started constructing it. And then now, a year later, I'm still not done because I kind of took a break from making it for a really, really long time. So, the robot dog can do a lot. It has a plastic outer shell, has I think 10 servos, one for the head, 2 per leg, so that's 8, and then 1 spare one. And then a main board made by like the company, and way more things like a Wi-Fi adapter, Bluetooth adapter, etc. It's really cool, but I'm trying to figure out how to calibrate it, because every time I calibrate it, the like front left leg always starts like moving like really like rapidly and uncontrollably, while the other leg servos move slightly or don't move at all. And then the head servo just tilts. That's it. I don't understand why, and I don't know what to do to fix it. I'm probably going to be reading a lot of documentation in the next few days. So, would I consider it as a worth it purchase? Not yet, but maybe soon. If I could program some type of artificial intelligence into it, where I put a camera inside of its head and it can look for its very tiny little eye holes, which are really tiny, which I need to do something about that. And if it can look through there, detect where I am, and then follow me, that would be really cool, like with some like intelligence. And apparently, if you stand on the robot, like accidentally like stand on it, the robot won't break. It can withstand human weight, but I don't want to test that. It has a lot of cool features, and I recommend checking out their website to figure out more if you're considering buying it. Another cool thing would be like connecting my PicoCalc to it and having the PicoCalc as like a command center for it. So I could type a command in like jump, and then maybe after like half a second, it would send a signal to it and make a jump, or like less than half a second, because Wi-Fi is quite fast in sending signals. That would be really cool, as my PicoCalc has the Pico 2W board, and the Bitu robot has also Bluetooth and Wi-Fi adapter. The company is really, really good. Like, the quality of the product is really good, but their software is not that good. It looks really old, something out like 1995-ish, and there's like a lack of there is a lot of documentation, but the FAQ just doesn't have like answers to the questions I have of how to make it calibrate properly. The manager of the company is very like willing to reach out to people, and I'm probably going to reach out soon because I've been encountering issues with my robot. They also sell 2 other robots, Bitu X and Nibble. Nibble's a cat robot, and Bitu X is just an upgraded version of the Bitu robot, but I rather just upgrade it manually. Do you guys know about the New Glenn Escapade like satellites? Well, I do. So the New Glenn is the rocket from Blue Origin. As you know, it's probably a competitor for Starship. I made a whole YouTube short on that recently. Go watch that. And the Escapade satellites, they're twin satellites that are built by Rocket Lab. New Glenn's only had 1 flight so far, and yes, that flight was successful. But would you consider sending a satellite, like a lot of money worth for a satellite, and a satellite straight away on a rocket that's had only 1 success? No, I wouldn't. That's a lot of money that could be wasted. Like, let's say for example, first flight, complete success, and second is an utter failure. How can NASA like trust with these contracts, and even Rocket Lab? I don't understand. They're usually very cautious with their like launches, and they keep like delaying their launches, because they want success. They don't have any count of like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, 1% chance of failure, that's fine. No, they will take no more than 0.1%. I mean, no less than 0.1% chance of failure. And that's a very good trait for Rocket Lab, but I don't understand why they're making satellites unless they got a huge contract from NASA to build these for the New Glenn rocket. From what I know, they're going to Mars and it's going to be orbiting to gather more information on the surface. I have a hot take on phone cameras. Yeah, most people will not like this take, as I know a lot of photographers that only use their phone, and this hot take will take away their dreams. So, most phone cameras right now have like 48, 50 megapixel main cameras, and some telephoto 12 megapixel cameras, and those are great. I don't. My hot take is that we don't need to improve our phone cameras anymore. All companies are just like boasting their camera performance, all of that. But I don't feel like we need to improve phone cameras anymore, because even the telephoto lens, which are most phones is between 3 to 5 times zoom, it's at like 12 megapixels. 12 megapixels at 5 times zoom is good. And even if it's like 5 megapixels at 10 times zoom, 10 times zoom will be needed rarely from you. 5 times zoom makes sense, 3 times zoom makes sense, 4 times zoom makes sense. But I feel like we don't need anything more than 50 megapixels as a main camera. And those cameras that have 100 or 200 megapixels, that resolution is just useless. The higher the megapixels of a camera is for a phone camera, the more storage you'll take. And then the more storage, like higher storage capacity you need to buy. Some phones currently still start off with 128 gigabytes of base storage. Not that good. But then the others that start with 256, that's a good amount. But if you have maybe 200 megapixel camera, that's 4 times of your average 50 megapixel shot. And the average 50 megapixel shot takes a few megabytes. Just times that by 4, that's already taking so much. And imagine if you have around 1,000 photos in your gallery. You're like screwed. That's a lot of photos. And if you're recording video at that resolution too, why do you need such high resolution video? It doesn't make sense. I know it's not a popular take, but there's not many things, like everyone has different opinions. And if you have an opinion on this and you're watching or you're listening on YouTube, comment on YouTube or contact me on Reddit if you're listening anywhere else. I have some quick space news from space.com. Nearly invisible asteroids around Venus could threaten Earth. But don't worry, not for a while. Thanks, Venus. A hidden population of asteroids sharing Venus's orbit could threaten Earth in a few thousand years, and we might not even see them coming without better telescopes. These so-called Venus co-orbital asteroids are currently undetected because of their alignment in the sky, but could one day drift into Earth's path, at least according to simulations, combining analytical models and long-term orbital integration. Our study shows that there's a population of potentially dangerous asteroids that we can't detect with current telescopes, said Valerio Curuba, first author and professor at Sao Paulo State University, said in a statement. Unlike asteroids in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter, these objects orbit the Sun near Venus in a 1-to-1 resonance, completing one solar circuit in the same time as Venus. As such, these asteroids are only in the line of sight of a telescope when the telescope is pointed sunwards, making it very difficult to see anything else but the bright yellow ball in the sky. However, though 20 known Venus co-orbitals exist, nearly all of them exhibit eccentrical greater than 0.38, placing them partly outside the sunward or observational blind spots, making them easier to detect during dawn and dusk observation windows. Models suggest a far larger cohort of low eccentricity bodies orbit too tightly around the Sun to be detected by ground telescopes, except under very specific conditions. These researchers propose using space-based instruments such as NASA's Near Earth Object Surveyor, to better monitor the regions to identify and track these co-orbitals. Wow, it did say a few thousand years, so not a big deal for all of us alive right now, but will be a big deal later on if the human race is still there. So this is interesting, and that's why I quickly fit this space.com space news in, as if I didn't, we'll be probably missing out on quite a bit of news. Starship Block 3 coming soon. Let's see. It's not much taller than Block 2, so not bigger fuel capacity really, but has a new Raptor 3 engines. Quite cool, isn't it? But what confuses me, and also makes me think, admire SpaceX, so it's kind of contradictory, is that the Starship has so many engines on its first stage. I'm pretty sure it's 33 Raptor engines. That's 33 engines, and each of them cost probably more than the average home. And what I'm confused about is why would they make so many engines? Isn't that just harder for them to make than make a bigger engine or a smaller rocket? And what makes me admire them is that if one of those engines fail, the others can just back it up, as we've seen in previous landings and previous launches. As one engine has failed, the others just support it with higher thrust on a specific engine than the others, just to make it contradict each other and stay on course. And it's really cool, but it's also really, really expensive and time consumptive. So I just recommend SpaceX should just have a smaller rocket, as Starship does not need to be that big, and it does not need to have 100-ton capacity to low Earth orbit. And now we shift gears from the rockets of yesterday to the ships of tomorrow. Because let's be honest, while we love the raw power of a SpaceX Falcon Heavy, or the elegance of the Saturn V, our current spacecraft don't exactly scream Interstellar or Battlestar Galactica, do they? Their capsules, their landers, their modules, they're built for a specific, grueling job. They're more like high-tech tents strapped to a firework than majestic starships we grew up watching. That is all about to change. As we move from simply visiting space and living in it, from flags and footprints missions to building true lunar and Martian bases, our spacecrafts are going to have to evolve from utility vehicles into something much closer to their sci-fi counterparts. The biggest driver of this change is simple: radiation shielding. On the way to Mars, when living on the moon, the cosmic radiation is serious, even life-threatening issue. So what's the best way to block it? Mass. Specifically, large amounts of water, food stores, or even packed down trash can be used to create thick, protective walls around the crew and living quarters. Now imagine what a ship looks like when it's designed to have crew and supplies placed in a giant thick shell of shielding, instead of just a thin metal hull. It becomes thicker, wider, and more integrated. Think of the difference between a cramped Apollo capsule and the sprawling multi-deck ships of the Expanse. They start to look like true, protected habitats, not just temporary transport pods. And it's not just the shape, it's the propulsion. We're moving away from massive, single-stage chemical rockets to modular, sustainable systems. The next great leap is nuclear thermal propulsion, a far more efficient way to power a mission to Mars. This tech would require the engines to be placed far away from the crew for safety, which naturally lends itself to those long, spindly spine designs you see everywhere in classic sci-fi fiction, where the ship stretches out for hundreds of feet. So don't be surprised. The next generation of spacecraft won't be silver bullets on a pedestal. They'll be chunky. They'll be built around a protective core. They'll have the distinct, segmented look. The kind of ships that could actually be home for months or years on end. They'll finally look like they belong to a future that feels a lot more like the movies. Well, I guess we'll have to conclude episode 3 of Astrox Radio right now. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode. So come back after 2 weeks for another great episode on this channel, podcast, radio, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Spotify, or Pocket Casts. So make sure to follow and or subscribe and enjoy.